And so this is kind of like emulating the workflow of JAV 101, but this also applies to ARC 100. And that like this is pretty much what you might be working with in the coming semester or two. So what are we gonna do? We're going to build a small house. And so I know that this house is very simple, but that's because we don't have a lot of time, and we also want to emphasize that this is not a tutorial that you should be taking too seriously. Like, I don't want you like taking notes, okay? This is not that kind of tutorial. We'll have the YouTube uploaded later. And so we'll model this in Illustrator. We'll make 2D lines of it. We'll put it into, we'll color it in, and then we'll put it in Photoshop, and then we'll have some little shadows, nice tree, nice sky. You get what I'm saying? All right, let's get into it.
Once you start ARC 100, they'll like set you up in Rhino. They'll teach you Rhino, and they'll give you your license keys. For Adobe, there is, through like the Daniel Studio link tree, there should be able to get a student discount for Adobe, which is for the 8 months you're in school, not including summer. I don't know. Oh, it's right there.
Oh, it's right there. Okay.
And it's $20-something a month. When you're going to be learning this, you're going to be following along with your prof in class. It'll be a lot easier. Right now, you're not going to remember much because you're not actually doing anything. But this is just to show you kind of what we're going to do. But in office hours, we're a lot more serious than this. We're just kind of trying to have some fun today with you guys. So let's get into it.
Okay. Welcome to Rhino. Very complicated, but be very mindful, be demure. Just my way of trying to be relatable to you guys. So I want to like kind of start off a little bit with some housekeeping. So in Rhino, you're like in inches or centimeters, and the way you want to do it is you go to File and you can open up Properties. Also, anyone shout out if like we're going way too fast, like we're very happy to slow it down. So like what you want to do is you want to go down to Units, for example. And like right now we're in meters, and our tolerance is 0.001 units, which is good enough for today. But if you want to render, like if you want to detail some really complicated stuff, you can set it to like, I don't know, a few extra zeros. So now it's very serious thing. And you can, I don't know, set the degrees as well. I don't really touch the angle tolerance, it's fine, but I think it's good enough. Okay, next, how do we actually use Rhino? So if you see down here, we've got a bunch of like little like pointer stuff, right? So like first you have your 4 viewpoints: top view, front view, right view, and I think that's pretty self-explanatory, yeah. But then afterwards you have this kind of set here. So that tells you like if you have an object, that's how it's going to like how it's going to select that object. It's going to be a little complicated, but I hope that as we go along, you kind of get the gist. So there's, okay, go ahead.
If you're drawing like something flat, 2D, you want to do it in the top view. If you're going to be modeling something, you're most often going to be doing it in perspective view, because then you can rotate around. This is like, you know, your 3D digital canvas. And so these are kind of the 2 viewports you're going to use most often if you're just doing really simple things like we are today.
Mm-hmm. Front and right is like a leftover from the AutoCAD days. Okay. So down here, you're gonna see like a different set of options to like also select your objects. For example, we've got planar, which means like when you draw like an object, like it kind of sticks to like the X, Y, Z axes. We've got OSNAP, meaning which is really good. It means like objects will stick to one another when you're putting them together. Smart Track, kind of hard to explain, but it can predict how you want to interpolate lines and things like that. I'll just leave it at that for now. And finally, Gumball is like this really cool toy that you can use to move things around.
So if I make a cube and I select the cube,
that's Gumball.
This is the Gumball, which allows me to move it around and then rotate it. And then if we go over here to display modes, right now it's a wireframe. If I go to shaded, we'll see a solid shape. If I go to rendered viewport, you can start to add shadows and stuff. But right now for what we're doing, we're just going to model within our standard shaded viewport.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so.
Yep. So Gumball is just a selection down here, down there at the bottom, and it just turns it on and off. Usually I leave it on. I'll only turn it off if it gets in the way. Like sometimes
if it's like incredibly small object you're trying to manipulate.
This will get in the way sometimes, and then you'll accidentally stretch your object. And then you're like, oh no, my wall is like 1 billion miles long. So
Okay, shall we get into the house?
let's go.
Okay, dream house. Anyone? What would you like to see in your dream house? Okay, you just want to live in like a tiny like condo with like no windows, is that right?
That's what they all live in probably. So
Okay. Balcony and pool.
you can do a balcony.
We can do the
Yeah.
balcony. All right, we got balcony. What else? Columns. Okay.
Okay, we can do columns. We can
do columns. All right, let's go. But first, we're gonna need a floor plan.
We are. So to do our floor plan, we're gonna go into top view. You wanna go for it?
Oh yeah, I will. All right. So the way that Rhino works is they want you to type in commands, but there are like little shortcuts that you can use. I'm not going to go into that because I've like set up a lot of custom commands, and I don't want you guys like be like, hey, how did you do that? Because like I can't tell you how to do it. So we're gonna like start off with a rectangle, right? And then we're going to type in where the first corner is going to begin. So if we want it to be at the origin, we're going to use XYZ coordinates again, which we then type 0, 0, 0. Simple enough, yeah. And now we wanted to set our dimensions. So I think it goes length first and then width first. So width afterwards. So that would be let's call it 6 meters. Oh, let's just go with 12.
And just so you guys see that again, on the side there, that bar is where you have all of your commands. But if you can't find something, you can just type it into the bar. So Gus typed in rectangle, and it automatically brings up the rectangle command, but you can also select it from there because you can see that's a rectangle. So you can make lines from here, polylines, curves, surfaces, but any command you want, you can type it in and it'll give you all the prompts that use that word. So if you type in poly,
yeah, polyline, polygon, polycount, da.
So if you can't find something in here, you can just type it in and it'll show everything you need.
Yeah, and also if you need any help, also like Google everything, like the Rhino forums, those people are incredibly helpful. 0, 0, 0. And now let's say we want to make a 12 by 8 meter rectangle. So this is going to be the boundary of our house. But then if we want to like create like walls, we're going to offset it. So we type in offset. And then it's going to ask you if you see like, oh my God, you got the clicker? All right, you handle that. So basically it's going to ask you how wide you want the offset to be. So the offset is creating a smaller shape inside it. So let's say the offset distance, we want it to be 3 meters, which is domestic home building standard. So now we have like if we were to extrude this, you would have 4 walls and no opening. What we want to do now is we want to type in line, and it doesn't matter how far this is. Like you can see I've clicked down a point and I can drag it around. If I hold down shift, then I get a perfectly straight line that adheres to orthogonal commands. Now, if I press space again, I can repeat this command. And I don't really care how wide a door is, so I'm just going to make it as wide as I want. I'm going to draw it again, okay? And so now I want to make the opening for real. So I'm going to highlight everything, and I'm going to type in trim. Trim is for 2D lines. And you're going to want to click, highlight, click, click, highlight, boom. Now you've got an open shape, right? But these are all lines that aren't assembled properly. So if I hide them all, you're going to see 4 curves added to selection. No. In Rhino, I want to see you guys building your models correctly because it's going to bite you in the ass later. You are going to regret it, seriously. So that means like stick to solids, not like don't really use surfaces unless you need to, because surfaces and solids like act differently when you want to subtract from them. But now we're going to create the walls, right? So we can now type in extrude curve. Okay, so 9 feet is approximately like 3 meters, I'm guessing. I don't know.
That's fine.
That's fine. So now we've got a happy little perimeter. Okay. So what do we do now? What else is a house missing? Door, windows. All right, we're gonna get to windows. We'll get to door in a sec, okay?
We don't need a door. We don't need it.
Oh no, we're not building a tomb, bro. Yeah. Okay, so maybe to build windows, you have to punch a hole through it. That's one way of doing it, okay? All of our suggestions here are just one of the many ways that you can build something in software.
If you're making a very complicated structure, you probably don't want to extrude all your walls. You're gonna probably have individual walls. because you're getting really complicated. But we're just doing 4 walls here. It's easy to extrude it. One of the most useful commands you're going to use, though, is the Boolean difference command. And this is when we take a shape and subtract it with another shape. For lines, we use trim, but for solids, we use the difference command. So I'm going to use my gumball to manipulate the size of my window. And then I'm just going to stick my window through my wall. And then we're going to take the wall. And over here, this is over there. You see the 2 circles kind of merging together. That's the Boolean union. So that means these 2 shapes will become one, but we want to split them apart. So over here, we have the Boolean difference. We're going to select that.
So I've set my settings in order to do this. Usually like Boolean difference will subtract the smaller or like the second object that you've selected to make the whole. But I've been able to make it in my settings so that like it still keeps it solid in case I want to go back to it. So now we've got a window, right? Maybe we can do it more. We can like drag it over here. Now let's say that I want to build a door, but I'm too lazy to like draw a new box, right? So I can press, I can select the object I want to move and I type move. I click on the corner, thanks to OSnap. That's great. Now, okay, this is like a solid and we need to transform it. So I can type in scale, 1 dimensional, scale 1D, that is. Now I can click to the end of the length I want to do and I can stretch it. And I can press space again to repeat the command. I can stretch it again, or I can squeeze it. And then finally, like, again, for demo purposes, this door is not going to be a great door, but okay. So we have some kind of error. So you're going to have to be careful when you scale things because sometimes Rhino is going to misinterpret your actions. So let's say like we want to differentiate the door. So we can also make it smaller, like 0.1 meters. Okay. And what other feature did we say we wanted to include? Balcony, was it? Columns.
Well, let's make a roof first. And then
Okay.
the column supporting that roof.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
Like Roman columns.
Yeah, we can show that. Okay, so columns. Now this is pretty simple. We can have square columns. So we're gonna type in box. Box is a very rudimentary command. Again, like you're just making little boxes to make the columns. How wide should the column be? 0.2 meters by 0.2 meters. Let's call it. Let's just like imagine it's steel and like it doesn't need like any kind of like bracing or something. So now we've got like 4 columns. Okay, so now what other thing does a house need? Roof. There we go. So
balcony.
We can do this a couple of ways. If I just go and draw a box again, I know like it's all like solids and solids and solids, but really like this is just the tip of the iceberg. So like this is before we get into curves and everything else. So let's call this 0.3 meters again. Great, now we have a slab. Okay, but there's something else that we can do with this. So if I hold down Control Shift and then I click on it, I can select the edge, right? And so what that means is that I can actually manipulate edges to be higher than they want. So now, what would you call this house?
Weird.
Okay, weird. I was looking for a more like
Modern.
proper architectural term, but okay. Let's just call this a vernacular hut.
Scandinavian.
Scandinavian. Okay, all right. We've got our Scandinavian house going on. So yeah, these are just like one of the small things you can do. And now to make our columns realistic, we can also go ahead, scale 1D, and we're going to make them stretch through the roof. This is important because we're going to shave these off, okay? So we select the solid, and now you can actually press trim. And you're not really supposed to do this, but
you're not supposed to do this.
You can do this. And you can just cut it off. Just zoom in, cut the rest off as well. It's faster to do this in Boolean difference, but I just want to show you guys that like you can do it. Just note that by the time you get into this, all your solids, as you can see here, they're gonna be opened. So you're gonna want to select. Oh.
So when you come into Rhino, we forgot to touch on that. Thank you. There are 6 layers like automatically created. the most important thing for you guys to have a smooth workflow is work within layers. So like I will name each of these layers based on what I'm doing. So I might have a layer for my roof. I might have a layer for all of my columns, for windows. And once you start making bigger files with like actual rooms and actual windows and furniture, you're going to want to have furniture. You're going to have sub layers within sub layers, but it's so good to keep it organized. So the first thing you want to do when you get into a file is do your units. You want to set up your layers. And then when you make your geometry, make sure you're making it on the layers you want to. So if I select my columns, I can change them to this layer. And now you're going to see they're the color that we set with the layer. So you can like play around with your layer colors, make it brat columns and make your file really aesthetically pleasing. But I don't want to see your guys' models all one solid gray like this. I want to see some colorful models to make sure you guys are all organized, because this is going to come important when we export it into Illustrator, because layers are how you're going to do your line weight. Now that we have our 3D model, we want to make a drawing with this. And the command you're going to use the most is called make 2D. That's where you take your 3D model and you turn it into a drawing. So
it just reads all the visible lines in that view, and then like it just records what it sees, basically.
So you could do this in any viewport. If you want a top view, we can make 2D of this. If we want a front view, we could make 2D of the front view of the house. One of the most common views you guys are going to be using is an axonometric view. Do you guys know what an isometric is? It's when
like straight vertical lines, parallel angles.
So like a typical isometric is like 30 degrees, 30 degrees, but you can also have 45 degrees. So if I go set view, isometric, and then you can pick like your cardinal directions. Now, as you can see, all these lines are straight verticals, and then we can do an isometric. But just for simplicity's sake, we will do a perspective.
Yeah.
If you want to go back and make changes and you're working on a drawing, you want to make sure you have this view saved so you can keep working on it. So if you go over to set view, this zoom thing.
Yeah, I know it's annoying. I think we can win.
You can save the view by name, and we're going to name this Awesome House Perspective. I misspelled that. I don't care. And now we have a save view, and you can see our name is up there at the top.
So you can adjust the view, but you can also come back to it when you want.
So if I change it now, you can see there's a star at the top, which means it's saved, and I can just go set view, and down there we have our view that we set. So we are going to select our house. We can do that by dragging. We can also do that by selecting all.
Or Control A, very typical.
And then we will type in make 2D. And this little box here is going to pop up, which gives us all these different options. Right now, do we want to see in silhouette? No.
No.
Okay. Right now, we just want group output. That means all of our lines are going to be nice and grouped up together. It makes it easy to manipulate them. And then it'll go, okay. It did it very quick. Sometimes my make 2Ds will take like 20 minutes if you have like thousands of lines and a bad graphics card. But
yeah, I went for a 90-minute walk, and then my computer switched itself off.
So now we have our house. Unfortunately, we didn't really do a great job organizing this into layers. But something we're going to want to do that your professors might want is sometimes it's nice to put a thicker outline around your drawing just to really bring, you know, visibility to this. So we're going to select everything and we're going to type in curve Boolean, which is a great command because then you can select different parts of it.
Or you can just do it the smart way and select the outside.
Yeah, I just want to show them, and I'm bad.
That's okay.
Boom. Now it's selected everything inside our lines. And if we hit enter, we got a line.
But
so let's move
put it on a new layer.
Yep.
Let's put it on new layer called curve boo. Okay.
My little curve boo thing.
Oh yeah. All right, we can color this red. Okay, not red. And now we can select all and we can either type group or we can press Ctrl G. So now we have this. And so you can't export this to Illustrator yet because this will be as large as it gets. This is like a 1-to-1 scale. What you want to do is you want to scale this down. So we can type in scale, just scale, not scale 1D. Very simple. Press enter for the automatic base point. And if you're like not scaling anything in particular, then you can just type it in and then you can type like 1:20 scale. And so this brings us down to a scale that's suitable for plotting at the Daniels faculty. Now,
Always keep a copy before you scale, so then you can keep rotating.
so now we don't want to see this house. Let's group it, Control G, and then Control H, hide. Easy as pie. Now we're gonna zoom in here. Gonna move this back, or actually, we're going to set up a
Page.
frame or like a page first. And so rectangle, and then we go to origin as well. Nope. And so now we're gonna set our page boundaries, and let's say we want us to be like 1 meter by 1 meter. Stick to ARC 100 standards here. So now you can put it in the middle of the page, so you can group it. And then, well, we can drag it. There's ways to like make it properly aligned in the middle. But you know, this is a way of doing it. Let's say, we want like kind of a ground layer. Should we?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But that might not align with the. Okay. So like, let's say you can add like extra details in the 2D version of it, for example. Like if you see like any extra lines, like you can just highlight it and then you can like delete it. A lot of stuff you can do. Like usually the Make 2D will have like depending on what your asset, how it's well designed or not. If you make 2D it and there's a lot of straight lines, like things you need to delete, you didn't do a very good job of choosing the model, I'm afraid. So basically, like now we have our frame at the origin, because when you export to Illustrator, what happens is Illustrator will read how far your page is from the whole software. So like when we're setting like artboards up in Illustrator, if you put it like, for example, all the way out in the desert, it's not going to register. It's going to fall off the Illustrator page completely. So you want to bring it to as close to the center as possible. Okay, now we can type in export, and then we can yeah, let's go to software demo. We can select, we can call this awesome house AALD rocks, and we can go down and we can select Adobe Illustrator. All right. If you select anything else, it will usually break. So don't do that. Now we press save. We can open the file. We can go to file location. Great. Now we've got a bunch of resources here. I don't
what's Shrek
see. Shrek was a test. Let's just say that. Okay, it's not showing up for some reason. No, where's the file? Okay. Yeah, no, it like it kind of breaks when you do that. Please hold. Oh, I'm very silly. This box pops up before it happens. So you can choose to scale it down automatically. But what I usually do is I scale it down in Rhino first, so I can understand like what's going to be on the page. And which is why you have to click preserve model scale. And so what we've got right now is a 1:1 meter scale, 1 meter to 100 centimeters. I like to use CMYK color, but really it doesn't really matter. So we press OK. And now it should show up. So there we go. We've got our wonderful Illustrator file.
Sure. Well, as you see, our layers that we set in Rhino are preserved here in Illustrator. So that's going to make it easy for us to then quickly line weight our house.
Okay.
Do you want to do the upload?
Yep. So basically, the white artboard down here by default should be a letter size, but we want it to be the whole like white meter. Otherwise, when you print, you're just going to get this white, this black edge at the edge of the paper right now. Okay, so we click on the artboard or like the frame that we want to include in it, and we go to artboards in this different panel. Now I press this page icon, and then if you go to the preset from letter, you can go to like fit to selected art, and so that's 1 meter, and now you press OK. Great, now it looks nice and clean. You want to like maybe talk about layers?
Okay.
Or like line weights?
So the most important thing for your drawings right now are going to be line weights. And in ARC 100, that is what you're going to be learning, and they're going to stress it a lot, is line weights, because that's how you can read a drawing, especially when you have complicated drawings. Line weights, push the important information to the top. Cody is laughing in the back because I don't use line weights, but so
For
here
this demonstration, Josh,
I will do the line weights. So this house, we have an outline. This is on our curve boo layer. So we're going to select that layer by clicking that box there. And as you can see, our outline is selected. And we want this to kind of push the house out. So if we make this like 3 points, now you can see that red outline is a lot bigger. Some other things we might want to make bigger is our windows. So in Rhino, it would have been nice if we put these on a separate layer.
Or we could just set them all as one line weight again.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm like lazy like that.
And we want to make our edges as well. So then you can read the edges of the house. So we'll make these a bit more of a higher weight. And then we're going to all make these the same color. We can make them any color we want, but for the sake of Photoshop, I'm just going to make them black.
I can do it. Sure. All right. And so, go ahead.
So you can do line weights in Rhino, but it's very hard to visualize what it's going to look like when you print it. And it's a lot less streamlined and easy. Here you can do things like dash lines. You just have a lot more control here over color and everything. So line weights in Illustrator is usually the way to go. I didn't know how to do that in first year, so my line weights were terrible because I didn't know how to export it into Illustrator and do line weights, but that's something we hope you guys can learn.
Yeah, so we're also trying to teach you like optimal workflows to save you as much time as possible. Eddie, no.
Yes, it is.
We're just scared of you right now, man. You know why.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh. Let's make the ground floor plane. If you're doing like a section cut, you guys are gonna be doing a lot of section drawings. That's when you like cut through a building. Your thickest line is always going to be your ground floor plane, the floor you're cutting through. And then you're going to have like a thick poche or thick cut lines through like the floors and the walls that you're cutting through. But we're not doing a section, but I'm just going to make the floor a little thicker. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So let's say you don't want to go into Photoshop. You just want to like color a happy little picture. So what we're going to do is we can first start a new layer by clicking down here, create new layer. And we're going to call this layer Live Paint after the command that we're going to use. So Live Paint should go at the bottom. And so in Rhino, you don't have to worry about the hierarchy of layers, but in Illustrator, what's at the top will be shown first. So you need to be careful about that. Let's select everything. Let's copy it. And let's click on the Live Paint layer and let's press Control Shift V, which is the command to paste in place on the layer. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to Object. We can go down to, oh, sorry, is it Object?
Yeah, Object.
Object. We can go to Live Paint. And then we press Make. So what this is that Illustrator is reading all the intersection lines and it's trying to, like, have you guys used like the Microsoft Paint tool, like the bucket tool? That's what Illustrator is doing, but in a more sophisticated sense.
It's like paint by the numbers, but fun.
Yeah. So now, like, let's say I want to color the sky pink.
You can't. You didn't.
I can. There is.
Smart.
Okay. So now we select our color, and now if you press K, you pull up the bucket. It's in the sidebar somewhere, but I just don't want to find it. It's like here. So now, like, we can paint the sky pink. You can also keep this workflow around, like if you want to map on a different sky in Photoshop, let's say, like this makes it very easy for the computer to recognize. Let's say like we want to have a brown, or that's really depressing, lime green floor. And then like let's say like we want a blue wall. See, very, very easy, very simple. Make it lighter.
Let's add some shading.
Add some shading. No, that's for Photoshop. Okay. So I'm not gonna color all of this because I'm not a kid anymore. But yeah, that is basically a very basic rundown of what you can do in Illustrator. Other instructors like Benazasati will push you to use Illustrator like from 0 to 100. So you can do a lot of things with Illustrator. That's why I don't really use Photoshop, and that's why I'm going to hand it off to Josh right now.
Do you want to export it as a Photoshop file or PDF?
Do it how you do.
Okay.
No. PSD. Like not PNG.
So now that we have our Rhino file or our Illustrator file, we can actually export it as a Photoshop file, and we're going to click use artboard so we make sure we continue to use the same artwork at the same size. So this is a vector right now. That means it's math, and math isn't fun, but vectors, drawings are fun because you can zoom in an infinite amount and it's never going to lose any quality. But in Photoshop, it's going to lose quality because it's raster based. It's an image. You want to do most of your drawings if you're bringing them to Photoshop at 300 pixels per inch. This just allows you to plot them. It's not going to be pixelated. It's good for printing, web. So 300 is the way you want to go.
But if you want to print it, CMYK is the way to go. If you don't want to print it, if you want to post it on Instagram, RGB is a better formatting color. Yeah.
You can place a PDF file, or you can place an Illustrator file into Photoshop, and then it'll like use the vector artwork while you're doing anything on it. But once you export it from Photoshop, you're going to be exporting it as a PNG or JPEG anyways. And you don't need it to be that high quality at that point. You're plotting, unless you're plotting something huge. But you could theoretically. So one thing we want to do in Photoshop is we're going to add shadows to this building. So now we're going to go into our rendered mode or our Arctic viewport. And now you can see we have some cool shadows. So if we want to manipulate this, we can go to our render tools and we have a sun panel. So right now the sun isn't on, and this lighting, as you can see, there's no sharp shadows. It's just using the skylight. If I turn the sun on and turn the skylight off and go back to rendered viewport, it looks weird. But then we can manipulate the sun and get some cool shadows. And then if we turn on the ground floor plane, we can have different shadow set. Gus has custom shadows on, right? The custom viewport?
I think it was Jack.
Or me.
Yeah, Jack like messed with my shadows at one point.
So his shadows look super sharp, which is not how it normally will look, but that's actually great for us because then this is going to make it really easy to overlay in Photoshop. So now we're going to export view capture to file. You can render it and then it'll get much high quality, but what we're doing, we can just do a quick view export to file.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we have our Photoshop file, which we will open in Photoshop. As you can see, the stuff we didn't color in is transparent. So what we want to do is we want to go over our layers.
So you just no, just like commentary because I don't know what you're doing.
So I just made a white background now, so there's no more transparent pixels. But now what we're going to do is we're going to add some textures and assets to make this drawing come to life a bit more. So the first thing I want to do is I want to add some shadows. So that view capture to file we just exported, we got here. So we can drag and drop this in. And now we have our shadows from Illustrator. So we can kind of scale this. This kind of just comes with like trial and error to line it up. There's no really easy way to get it, but it's pretty easy. You can just stretch it automatically without holding anything. It'll stretch proportions equally. If you hold shift, it won't anymore, but you don't want to do that. So that's close enough for what we're doing. But now we want to be able to see the colors in the line work that we were doing. So at the top here, we have our layer styles. And this basically allows us to manipulate this layer and how it interacts with the layers beneath it. So there's all these different ones, and they start affecting how it interacts with the artwork beneath. So if we do something like multiply, it'll affect the colors. So is like darker color and color burn. But we can do like an overlay. you can see it's lightly adding some shadows.
Looks good.
That looks interesting, but we'll go with it.
Yeah.
You can overlay your shadows in Illustrator and do layer styles in Illustrator. It's the exact same process. You can also add textures in Illustrator, but it's much harder to manipulate images in Illustrator than in Photoshop. Photoshop is built for images and it gives you like a lot more options. But if you wanted to keep a raster or a vector image, you can keep it in Illustrator. The same thing we did in Illustrator where we're doing the live paint bucket, we can kind of do that thing here, but with the selection tool. And this magic wand tool is magic, and it'll let us select colors that are the same. So now we can select the sky and make a mask. So let's say I don't like this sky and I want to make a blue sky because skies aren't actually pink unless there's forest fires and we don't like those. So we're going to drag in our sky. Ooh. So now we got a nice blue sky. And we want that to replace our pink sky. So if we direct select with the magic wand, the pink sky on that layer, we get a selection box for the sky. And now if we turn the sky back on, down here, this is the most, oh, I'm probably over here. Can you see that? That little thing? That's the most important command you're probably going to use in Photoshop. It is the masking tool. And once I create a mask, it'll get rid of what was not in the selection. So now we have our sky. We can also play with our layer styles if we want to like make this dystopian sky where the world is on fire.
World's on fire. Oh,
yeah, that's cool. We can start adding assets. Assets are really important because they really make your drawing come to life.
Yeah, so usually you can find these online, like a lot of people provide them for free. But there's also like, you know, you can make them yourself. We have tutorials on our YouTube for that, I believe. And like with Photoshop's new AI capabilities, erasing a background is as easy as pie.
So let's say I wanted to create a texture for this wall. So what I would do, I wouldn't just take this, go like that and mask it because the texture is flat and it wouldn't mask the perspective we have. So if you do Command T and transform, you can do distort, perspective, skew, and rotate. We're going to use distort, and this allows us to manipulate based on the points of the image. And then we can match the perspective of our house to our textures. So then when we overlay our texture on our wall, it matches the perspective. With the metal, it doesn't really matter, but let's say you're working with grains of wood, it would have a much bigger impact. So right now this is going on our doors and we don't really want that. So again, we can select the house and then mask it out. And then we can add Shrek. And then
in your real perspectives, please make sure he's to scale.
And he is chasing people out of his swamp. You can create shapes in Photoshop as well. And these are like similar to how you create shapes in Illustrator. So if we want to add a sun, we can create a white sun. And then if we want the sun to be behind our house, we would just mask it out. And to invert the mask, Control I.
Make it black. Black hole sun. Black hole sun.
And that is the worst architectural drawing ever created. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay.
But that is the workflow you guys will be working with in a lot higher quality and more fun. Well, hopefully it's gonna be more fun, but Also more serious. So you're gonna be working in Rhino, going to Illustrator, and going to Photoshop. This is kind of just an overview of the easy commands you're gonna use. You're gonna do line weights, live paint in Illustrator, and you can do textures and masking in Photoshop, adding people, adding assets. Those aren't things you might necessarily do in Rhino, but as you saw on our website, we have assets you guys can use in both Illustrator and Photoshop.
Link in bio, people.